Good morning, everybody out there in the world. The dolphins say good morning to you as well. This is like an animal show. It's like an animal house here today. Totally awesome that you guys are joining me here this morning. That the pirate of Redbeard and Bird are also joining here today. And I just maybe it may be a controversial topic. I don't think it's going to be controversial when I talk about it. Famous last words. But we're going to talk about New York City, a place where I will be here in probably a couple of weeks. I don't know if there's going to be any garbage taken out there or anything that's going on there. I mean, we're going to read the story together. Excuse me, going through puberty. And we're going to try to figure out what's going on here today. This is the Erskin Music Show. For those of you who have never seen this show before, I'm usually not dressed as a pirate, but it's a combination, a confluence of things have happened this morning that have brought me to this low ebb and low place of service to the world and the community this morning. First of all, the bird has flown away. Why is the bird flying away? All right, first of all, I didn't know the bird flew. Who knew? But first of all, I don't know if any of you guys are like live streamers or YouTubers are out there, but you know that there's that kind of awkward moment about 20 seconds before your show starts, and you're like, "Oh, I haven't combed my hair today." Now, obviously, if those of you who have seen my hair before, it doesn't require any more than about 4 seconds to make it. But I'm literally sitting here just trying to figure out how to make it look like, because I know there's people who watch the show, them brothers out there, they'd be like, "Hey man, your edge up is a little off. Hey brother, look like Tony Hawk today." Yeah, I know you guys are out there, and hey, I love it. I love it. Constantly making fun of my edge up. I'm concerned about my edge up from time to time because it's kind of that home remedy kit. And so that's kind of one of the things that happened. I was like, let me go ahead and throw this pirate hat up on myself. But this is also what I found out in about 15 seconds. Well, we all found out together that the bird flies. But together this morning, we also are going to experience the joy of seeing that Big Head is actually a real character in this scenario. This live stream is dependent upon Ruby and Scooby in the background, keeping me accountable for what it is that I say and do. And then also Big Head gives me suggestions over the corner. So we're going to let Big Head wear the hat for just a little bit. Big Head, you want to wear the hat? Do it. Do it. Oh, 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 oh. How does it work? I don't know how that works. I don't know how that works. Anyway, there was a segment there where because Big Head is in the screen. Big Head was wearing the hat and I wasn't. How do we make that happen again? I don't know. But about 4 seconds before the show started, Big Head had the hat on and I didn't have the hat on. So I was like, well, that doesn't serve any purpose right there. Man, that still shows everybody that my hair is not fixed today. So this is going to be the pirate episode. Now I'll take the hat off here in just a second. Comment section is turned on. Good morning to the world. Good morning. The show starts and the show has already started. Comment section again is turned on. For those of you who are watching on Facebook Live, thank you guys so much for allowing me and my flying bird to invade your space this morning. For those of you who are watching on YouTube, thank you guys so much for the international love and support that you guys are giving. And for those of you who are watching on Twitch and or listening on Twitch, we do appreciate that. The Dolphins appreciate that. And then there are others that appreciate that. Oh, yeah, dogs appreciate that all over the world. I am the cat psychologist, so I'll just say a quick word about that, since most people don't know that I'm a cat psychologist. You've never seen this show before, you'll be amazed to know, where is the cat psychology? I always run into cat psychology and cancel culture when I'm not on the show. But then, oh yeah, cat psychologist, here we go. So that's a little bit about me, cat psychologist. Just to let you guys know, quick remedy. I hate all the cats in the entire world. I hate cats. I hate all the cats in the whole world. All right, so that's my cat psychology for today. We should be rolling along, making people mad. Good morning out there in Kansas City. Good morning, Jason. I think you guys are really going to like this episode. Let me get out of this ridiculous hat here today. This is the Erskin Music Show. So we're going to get to some music here and just we got a number of things that we do at the start of the show. And so I'm just kind of, format wise, I'm overloaded by the format here. We got flying birds in the show today, which is one unusual thing, but we've also got verse of scripture for the day. We're going to read that here from Psalm 42. We've also got it's National Sandwich Day, so we're going to talk a little bit about that. And you got music that's coming on. So let me just ask you guys, there's three things that we got to do before we get to the topics of the day. Do you guys want music first? Do you want Bible first? Do you want sandwiches? Oh, this is going to make you hungry. All right, let's go. Let's go, people. Ding, ding. That's the one that we should. That's definitely not the one. Yeah, that goes really well with cat psychology. Cat psychologist. There you go. That's that. You thought the hokey pokey was what it was all about, but no, that's what cat psychology is all about. Oh yeah. Okay. This is another way to cover up the fact that I haven't done my hair today, but it's okay. I'm gonna get over it. Life is gonna be better because of it. Where are we? What are we doing here? Come on, give me back my screen. Bang! The overexposed Erskin. I'm up in your face again. Once again. Here we go. Comment section turned on. You guys got no votes? You got no confidence this morning? You got no courage this morning? What do you want? What you want? You want Bible first? Or do you want me just to pick? I'm just gonna pick. All right. Nobody's participating here today. You guys all get the Rasta horn whenever I can find the Rasta horn. So yeah, I'll just do whatever. It's the Erskin Music Show. We can do whatever we want to do on this show. All right, so let's do because we already started out a little weird on the show. Hey Shannon, hope you're doing well this morning. Good morning, Shannon. Oh yeah, I forgot to say this. My typical introduction for the show is I just need 1 hour a day. 1 hour a day, and we will be able to redirect this thing in America and in the world. Seems to be going on a downward cycle, but hey, 1 hour a day with the Erskin Music Show. I will actually be espousing things that I think nobody out there is saying. And now I know there are those of you who have secret news sources. I think maybe some of you guys who watch the show are part of the Illuminati because you guys have details and facts and information that you've got from some news source that I have no idea and probably no one else knew existed. And so sometimes you guys come with facts on this show. I'm not a big conspiracy theorist. I'm not a conspiracy theorist at all. But sometimes you guys have information that I'm not privy to. I can't be everywhere all the time. I'm not omniscient. I'm not all knowing. But what I am is I try to be diligent and try to be, you have to use the F word here. Is the censorship button ready? I try to be fair to the news sources that are out there. And so we're going to be reading a little bit from the Fox News. It's Associated Press. So people settle down. And I'm also going to be reading a little bit from the Washington Post, also Associated Press story. And so try to avoid some media bias as far as that's concerned as much as we can. So we're going to get into some topics here today, but I just say all that simply to say that I think there's some takes on this show no other show has. In fact, I'm coming at things from a completely different vantage point than anything that I've read and or heard. But if you've heard the same thing, let me know. Hey, Tucker Carlson said this on his show the other day. You're not breaking anything news. There's nothing new under the sun. I get that part of it. But I'm saying some things that I haven't heard Christian talk radio people talk about, that I haven't heard news cycle media people talk about. And so we're just how we do it. And yes, I did, even though I'm very ADD, avoid the tendency to break into Montel Jordan when I said this is how we do it. So let's get to it this morning. Let's get Bible verses because that's more important than anything that we're going to do on this show. Again, let me just give you guys a little bit of a. Oh yeah, Teen Wolf, man, I love it. Okay, this is my black floppy Bible that was given to me by Pastor Bob down in Texas, and he's a wonderful pastor and friend and mentor and discipler. And a lot of my spiritual growth happened at the Ministry of Ferris Baptist Fellowship. When I went back recently, he gave me this black floppy Bible. Now, those of you who read the Bible, which hopefully that's a lot of you guys, know the value of not just getting a Bible. The Bible is the Bible, and like there's nothing better than that. But when you get a Bible that when you take it out of the case, it's just already floppy. You see how floppy that is? I think I've probably talked about this every show. I normally will read the electronic version of scripture, but just because this Bible is so awesome, I have a tendency just to read this. Because when I took it out of I mean, if you preach, like, come on, literally, it just floppy. You love a floppy Bible. And imagine when it gets worn and I start reading it more and marking in here, and then it looks like that old, whew, man. All right, here we go. Today's Bible verse is located in Psalm 42:11. For Psalm 42:11, I hear those Bibles pages turning out there. Those pages turning. You got there? All right, so here we go. Why, my soul, are you so dejected? Why are you in such turmoil? And this is David coaxing his own soul. And this is a great psalm because it teaches us how to coach and how to chide and how to goad ourselves when our soul is downcast and when things are happening in the world that we wouldn't want those things to happen, but it's a fallen world and we recognize that we're a victim of those things or that those circumstances are sort of undeniable in our lives. Here we go. He says, put your hope in God, for I will still praise him, my Savior and my God. Now, notice what he didn't say there. Put your hope in God and everything will go well. You just put your faith in God and everything in your life will work out. And that's not what he said. In fact, that's not what scripture teaches us. I am so overexposed in this camera. Anyway, focus. But what he did say is that he's going to put his hope in God and that he's going to trust the Lord regardless of what the circumstances are. And I find that is really the word of encouragement that we need to hear in our lives, because we will not always be able to change the circumstances around us. We live in a fallen world, and there's things that sort of are overwhelming in this world as a relationship to sin. And because of that, we can't always change the circumstances, but through prayer, through loving God's word, living in community, those things begin to change us in the midst of those circumstances. And God will often use those circumstances to encourage us to grow and to find another place of rest and security in him. And so, man, a great psalm, once again, for us to consider. If you're watching this show and you're not a follower of Jesus Christ, then I just say, hey, keep watching the show. Like, there's some things that you're going to hear on this show that, like I said, I don't think anybody out there that I know of is saying some of the things that we're saying on this show. And so I'm not claiming to be novel because there's nothing new under the sun. I just think that in this season, there's a lot of people who are focused on other things. I'm really focused on talking about some of these issues and then giving different perspectives, because I've had a number of perspectives, in my life, and one that I think will be helpful for us today, if not instructive, as we talk about New York City and talk about what's going on there in their situation. So here we go. That's good. That's good. Any comments? We got some things coming on here. Okay. All right. Good. We got some. Well, this is good. We got some folks who are tuning in from Twitch today. That doesn't normally happen. And again, I think as the viewership starts to grow, we started out when we started doing the Erskin Music Show at around almost 500 followers, subscribers to the show. We're up to 700, climbing up to 800 here, hopefully very soon. So keep telling your friends about the show, especially on YouTube, as we hope to monetize this show. We want to climb up to over 1,000, hopefully by season 4. So that grows every day. Steve McCauley, thank you guys so much for that verse of the day. I know that you are doing very similar things out there, and so take it and run with it. That's the one that I found in my Bible app this morning. I thought, ooh, this is perfect for the subject matter that we're going to be talking about a little bit later on today. Before we do that, let's get some Erskin music. I don't know if you guys knew this, but we have a new album that's coming out. Here's a promo. Dance, everybody. We're gonna raise them like a party. All right, so that's the promo for the upcoming album that's coming out tomorrow. As a matter of fact, it should be on all different platforms. For those of you that pre-order, that's coming very soon. Or if you've already digitally downloaded, then you've got it yourself. There are some who wanted hard copies of actual CDs, and so we'll flash those around. We've got Angela McCusin that's coming on tomorrow, and that's going to be an engaging and incredible interview. The strongest lady that I know, and tomorrow I'll tell you why. But we'll also have some of the album, some of the effects of Just Dance coming on because that's going to be new and out there for the public. Yeah, Shannon, looking forward to the new album. You will enjoy it. You got a little sneak peek, I think, at Nehemiah Fest. Did we do Just Dance? Yeah, we just danced at Nehemiah Fest, and it was a lot of fun. So that's going to be coming out there, having a lot of fun with that. Before we do Erskin music, let's do our segment called
That's weird.
What is weird is that I am super overexposed in this episode of the Erskine Music Show. We are having fun with cameras. That is not the way forward. And that probably is not the way forward either, but I want to change the camera so that when we get to these different segments, there's a strategy here. We're going to start chopping these up. The long form broadcast probably is not the most popular form. I can cut these segments up into 2 or 3 minute segments and then be able to edit these, get these to YouTube, draw some listenership and viewership that way. That's all fun. That's all good and everything. But did you know that today, all over the continental United States, and probably also Alaska and Hawaii, truth be told, is National Sandwich Day? National Sandwich Day. I think I'm going to go to Subway today. I mean, that kind of has to happen, right? On National Sandwich Day. If they're wise, they will have some incentives for me and some offers for me so that I can enjoy National Sandwich Day. Who doesn't enjoy a good sandwich? Come on, people. I know you gluten-free people out there. There's gluten-free bread. You total keto people that are out there. I know, but there's different ways that you can eat sandwiches. All right, so here's the deal on National Sandwich Day. Did a little history dive here, history.com, history.com. The story of the sandwich. Listen, Americans eat more than 300 million sandwiches per day. Did you know that? Well, you do now. Yeah, that's right. Here's the history of the sandwich. And I like this. The sandwich, as it was known, was popularized in none other than England in 1762 by John Montague, the fourth Earl of Sandwich. Oh, well, let's read about this Mr. Montague because he was quite an eccentric fellow. Legend has it, as most historians agree, okay, that's a great start, that Montague had a substantial gambling problem that led him to spend hours at the end of a card table. He was probably a rotund man as well. It doesn't say this in there, but sometimes you got to be politically correct. You can't be talking about people's weight up in this thing. During a particularly long binge, he asked the house cook to bring him something he could eat without getting up from the seat. I'm pretty sure he probably, especially if he's eating sandwiches and all that bread and everything, and he's just hanging out and just gambling. And yeah, he probably was rotund. But we're just going to leave that there as a historical fact that we neither confirm nor deny. Without getting up from a seat, Montague enjoyed his meat and bread so much that he ate it constantly. And as a concoction grew popular in London society circles, it also took on the Earl's name. Okay, of course, John Montague, or rather his nameless cook, was hardly the first person to think of putting fillings between slices of bread. In fact, we know exactly where Montague first got the idea for his creation. Montague had traveled abroad to the Mediterranean, where Turkish and Greek meze platters were served. Dips, cheeses, and meats were all sandwiched between on layers of bread. Thanks, Greeks! In all likelihood, Montague took inspiration from these when he sat at the card table. Montague's creation took off immediately. Just a few months later, a man named Edward Gibbon mentioned the sandwich by name in a diary entry, writing that he had seen 20 or 30 of the first men of the kingdom in a restaurant eating them. By the Revolutionary War, the sandwich was well established in England. You would expect. Okay, here we go. America. Colonists would have taken to a sandwich as well, but there's no early written record of them in the country until the sandwich recipe did appear in 1815. Sandwiches. What y'all know about sandwiches today? What y'all know about this screen? Anyway, at the end of the day, the sandwich and the history of the sandwich, all I got to say is
That's weird.
all right, so let's get to some Erskine music here. The comment section again is turned on for just a few moments here. We're gonna gear up. I'm probably gonna go brush my hair. Does it look bad? Okay, it doesn't look as bad as I thought. It takes me 4 seconds to fix it, so it's not really that big a deal. But we're gonna do Erskine music song because this is the Erskine music show. Shameless. I'm a shameless plug for this show. And shameless plug for some music out there. I think you guys will enjoy this music. I kind of got it organized a little bit better now. So this is Be Brave. You guys check it out. And then I'm coming back here in about 3 minutes. Comment section is turned on. You guys chop it up. I'm going to go brush my hair, brush my teeth, get everything ready for today. No, I already brushed my teeth. We did do that this morning, but I had the do-rag on until the show. Anyway, it's black people stuff. All right. Well, here's Be Brave. Hope you guys enjoy. This is one of the new cuts. It's not a new song, but we got digitally remastered for the Just Dance project. And so this is an upbeat project, some electronic dance music. Normally I'm chopping up various genres on my album so that you go from pop, country, hip hop, R&B, ballad, soul, children's music, and EDM. But on this album, we wanted to kind of keep it a little bit more programmed, a little higher energy. And so you guys are really going to enjoy the selection. And I think the way the album is put together. But this song is called Be Brave.
Surrounded by people watching me, they're watching me, watching my every single move. Something special is rising up, yeah, it's rising up, coming from deep inside of me. Like a flame, it's the passion of my life. You can see it when you look into my eyes. I'll never be the same, yeah. Love makes me who I am today. Makes me wanna be brave. Love makes me who I am today. Makes me wanna be brave. There's a melody and it's rising up, yeah, volume up, so everyone can hear the sound. I'm gonna sing like we never did. Oh, we gotta sing until they hear the harmonies, till everybody can hear the song. Let's have a party, everybody sing along. We'll never be the same, yeah. Love makes me who I am today. Love makes me who I am today. Makes me wanna be brave. Love makes me who I am
got to admit that was kind of awesome. All the background stuff going on there. This is pretty high tech show here. So, I guess I should say this with all humility. These talents are on loan from God. So there's just a lot of things that we do on this show. Don't try these at home. You might mess your show up if you try to do these. All right, let's get to it today. Thank you guys for your comments thus far. Comment section is turned on. We want to keep that going. So let's get to some breaking news. Hey, breaking news. Oh, here we are. Story out of New York City, one that mirrors and echoes other places in the country where there is a mandatory mandate for vaccination. And that discussion has taken place in a lot of places. New York City comes as no surprise. I'm going to be reading a little bit from the Washington Post, Fox News. And so just to kind of catch us up, yesterday I did a theology of work and talked about how it's God's design that we work and that we image our creator and the work that we do. And it says a lot about who we are. It says a lot about who God is and the work that he gives us. And it says a lot about our stewardship of the resources that God has given us. We talked about that yesterday in conjunction with also a theology of rest. So there's work and there's rest. And we kind of balanced that out yesterday. And I said, this is going to lead us to a work situation, essentially a work situation that we're looking at as it intersects with so many other things. And so while there's tons of things that I could talk about, and as you guys well know that I should be talking about out there, I wanted to talk about this because it dovetails so well what it is that we have talked about thus far coming into this episode there. And so we've got the biblical rationale for work. We've got the biblical rationale for rest and how that reflects, at least Courtney Ellis's writing there yesterday, where she was talking about because life is so hard, because we live in a fallen world, those times of respite, those times of play, those times of sort of the emotional intelligence of being able to make light of situations. Not that we're frivolous people, but we're people who can say we're going to enjoy life to a certain degree, even in the midst of the difficulty of life. Leads us to this story today because all of those things intersect. We have work life, we have the pandemic, obviously, health, safety, concern. We have justice that I'm going to get to here in just a little bit. We have government. I mean, this is a cross section of so many different things. And so let me get to this in a screen that it is breaking news. Let me get back to that screen so that I can do some reading here for you guys this morning. All right. So we talked about a number of different things here, and I'll put some things up here on the screen because instead of just being just somebody who's regurgitating information, I want to also be, I think, hopefully teaching some things that I think I see through this article here. And so let me get my teleprompter going here. All right. This is from the Associated Press. This was from Fox News. They're recording yesterday. And so I'll read from yesterday, updated that today from the Washington Post. And so there have been some significant updates from what the Washington Post reported yesterday. So I want to talk a little bit about that as well. They kind of got some numbers and some statistics wrong. But let me read from the Associated Press from yesterday to kind of get us into this story. If you hadn't heard about it before, then here's just sort of a crash course on what's going on there. As I put it in my notes, show notes for today, and all of these articles that I'm reading from have mentioned here thus far are in the show notes for today. So go back to the show notes. And if there's a link that you want to click on, you can read these articles in their entirety. New York City on sick leave is the way that I titled it, at least in my writing. De Blasio tweeted Saturday night that 91% of the city workers had received their vaccine, or at least one dose of the vaccine, which represented a jump from 83%. I'm kind of into the article already and just kind of wanted to get to the meat of it. There was a mandate. All of the city workers and employees needed to be vaccinated or they would risk losing their job. And then he reported, de Blasio, mayor of New York, that 91% had received the vaccine, represented a jump from 83% as of Friday. So story indication is that there were people who were receiving the vaccine maybe at the last hour and saying, well, I don't think this is worth losing my job. Maybe I consider some of the other things that were there. And so that number increased. And I don't exactly know how many people that is, from an 83% jump to a 91% jump, but more on this later. More than half of the workers who hadn't been vaccinated yet had submitted exemption requests, and the requests were being processed, and added that on a tweet on Sunday night. But fire union officials were calling on the mayor to give the rank and file more time to decide on whether or not to receive the vaccine. Their quote, "We're forcing these decisions on our members, and they're acting accordingly. Some members have gotten the vaccination," says James McCarthy, the president of the Uniform Fire Officers Association. He said that some of the members retired after serving the general public in the city of New York, and that they had served for over 25 years. And so see different responses to what's going on there. So it's very impactful, as we needed more time. That's all he added. "We were trying to negotiate more time to make the decisions, just like the de Blasio administration gave other organizations every other year in this city. Under a city mandate, those who haven't received at least one dose of the vaccination would be put on unpaid leave starting on Monday, raising the possibility of shortages in police, fire, EMS workers. New York has more than 300,000 employees." And so massive number of people who were impacted by this. And in fact, because of sort of the way that the article is written, this, in conjunction with other things that are going on in the city, was a discussion that they were having. All right. So that kind of gets us to the story as it was positioned yesterday. We knew this was coming. We knew this was going to be a part of the discussion and some of the decision making that was going on there. We have some unions that were going back and forth in New York and trying to discern and discover kind of what the best course of action is there. Mayor de Blasio and his leadership was pushing toward this mandate. So we have recalibration here a little bit from the Washington Post here today. Is something they had reported yesterday about the number of people who have been vaccinated and the number of people who, have been infected based on every 100,000 people. And they had maybe put something that was a little erroneous, and so they went back and they sort of recovered that. So from today's Washington Post article, there are no major disruptions in the city services as a result of the vaccine mandate coming into force, said Mayor de Blasio during a news conference. I'm not sure about that. Goes on to say in the Washington Post, about 9,000 city employees overall were placed on leave without pay status on November 1st, out of the workforce of more than 300,000, while roughly 12,000 had applied for religious or medical exemptions to vaccinate, and they were waiting for a response from the city, de Blasio added. Now, the article does go on to say that most of those who were waiting on exemptions for one reason or another are probably going to get a no, but that was a tactic and maybe actually genuinely a source of them needing to examine this. And so, that's part of the discussion as well. The article goes on to say that frontline emergency personnel, such as firefighters and police officers, are considered to be at high risk of infection or death because they are exposed to more people in the line of duty. In October, let's just put all of the stuff on the table here. In October, Anthony S. Fauci. Does anybody know what the S stands for? Anthony S. Fauci, the United States top infectious disease expert, urged police officers to get vaccinated against the coronavirus, saying the resistance doesn't make any sense, as more police officers die of COVID than they do in other causes of death. COVID-19 was the leading cause of death for officers in 2020 and 2021, according to the Officer Down Memorial page, which tracks on-duty deaths of U.S. police officers. This mandate was the right thing to do. Going back to de Blasio, it was the right thing to do, and the proof is in the pudding, de Blasio said. We now see that it worked. There's a lot in this. Is there not a lot in this? So we've got the push and pull of the mayor. So we've got outside influence, government, people, voices coming in from all over the place. And instead of me camping out, I generally tend to be a little bit more on the conservative side of things. At least as a critical thinker, I want to make sure that I'm applying critical thinking, at least to some of the articles that I'm reading, knowing that it's hard to get a complete story here. And in the way that articles are written, sometimes some of the most important information is not necessarily put in the article at all, and sometimes it's rearranged in there. And so there's a lot of bits and pieces and data in this information, but at least I've read enough for you to know that you've got a lot of employees that are directly impacted and affected by this mandate. There's a lot of employees who have taken the vaccine. Whether they wanted to take the vaccine or they didn't want to take the vaccine, their number is recorded as someone who was vaccinated, or at least having received one dose. There are people who are on the fence regarding this and maybe have used a strategy to say, you know what, we're going to call out sick. And de Blasio goes on in the Washington Post article and says, if they're away without leave, if we find this out, they could possibly lose their job when they come back, if they come back. And there's some people who have retired after serving for many years, maybe close to retirement already, but maybe this has kind of forced the issue. So there's a lot of different cross sections of discussions that are going on here. But what I wanted to do was I wanted to turn this whole thing around and say, of course, all of us. And if you, like I said, I'm going to be probably in New York in a couple of weeks here. But if you know people who are directly impacted by this, or you yourself are directly impacted this, or you yourself are one of those that has had to make some critical decisions, not just in New York, but in some other places where you see similar type of urgings from leaders, then this is a very real issue. Very, very real, because it hits home in some of the most important places. But I wanted to turn this issue around today and say we can all piggyback and maybe camp on a particular issue that, like, because for me, like the data that they went back and redacted on the Washington Post, they're seeing 19 new cases of infection every 100,000. Now, they had misreported that before and made it seem like the urgency and the crisis and the deaths per day were a little bit more than what they had reported before. Oops, we got that number wrong. And so that's the first thing that, like, for me as a critical thinker, I'm going, wait a minute, like, how big a problem is this? Like, that we have to mandate this? And then the Officer Down Memorial page, that's a national statistic, and not one that is specific to New York. So I'm wondering, in New York, how many officers had died. So what I want to do on this episode is I want to go through a rationale for thinking through some of the decisions. Yeah, I got these in my notes right here. All right. And I assigned this. Everybody wants to be everybody wants to be a leader until until it's time to make a decision. So here's one of my principles. We all take shots at leaders because the leader is the most visible person. And most of us have maybe been in a situation where we've had to lead something, or at least we've been required to lead. But there's a lot of people who have never been in a position of leadership before, and they've never been required to evaluate different things that are going on and make a decision that's going to impact a lot of people. There's actually a lot of people out there that when you ask them about it, they don't want that smoke. They do not want to be. I'll talk to people and I'm like, hey, doing a great job on your job. Man, you keep working like this, you're going to be the manager of this place. Like, no, I don't want to be a manager. No, I'm just here working my job, working my hours, and I'm going to go and do my thing. Like, I don't want those responsibilities. And so I know that there's a lot of people who are out there. They don't want to be chiefs. They barely want to be Indians. And I know that that's probably not politically correct, but I don't see how it's not politically correct. That is a historical. Anyway, we can get to that on a totally different episode. They do not want to be in charge. They want to just kind of do their job, not worry about it. Let other people take that smoke. Let other people take the hit. And so that's there. But I wanted to, because I've been a leader in very many situations before. Leader, yep, you're the guy that we're coming to get. Yep, you're the one that we're going to criticize. Yep, you're the one with the big mouth. Yep, you're the one with the policies that we don't like. Turn this around and let you look at it from a leadership standpoint. And there are more considerations than this, but just think about this for a second. If you're de Blasio, if you're in leadership, if you're making these decisions that are going to affect, you think about 300,000 people who are employees, but then you think of their families that are also impacted. And then by extension, you're talking about maybe close to maybe 1 million people that are impacted by these decisions that you're making. So 1 million people are potentially impacted by a decision that you're going to make. You're looking at a national and international health crisis, and you're looking at data and you're looking at numbers. Here's a question that you might ask, and I'm sure that they did ask, and one that they hopefully spent some time considering how these things would work out. But here it is: high risk during a pandemic. Do you have workers who are put in the public sphere of influence, the public sphere cycle of work, who are dangerously exposing themselves because of the job that they are required to do? Now, that's a question that I'm sure that they had to ask themselves, and they had to weigh, okay, we're putting these people out there, we're asking them to work, we're wanting them to be out in the public eye, we need the services that they provide. What is their risk during this? So it's a risk assessment question. Now, another question that you would probably look at in a situation or scenario like this is, what are we looking at in terms of clear data in New York City? There have been reports that have come out, and there's been redactions to those reports, and then there's been mishandling of the reports, and then underestimation, overestimation of those reports. How clear is the data? Anytime when I'm going to make a decision, I always want to know, give me the best information that you have before I make the decision, so that I can make a decision based on accurate information. And I think for those of you who are watching this who are leadership minded, and even if you're not leadership minded, this will at least help you kind of figure out the rationale behind why people do some of the things that they do. What is clearest, the clearest information that we have? Not confusing information where you're like, okay, well, here's this stat here, and then here's this stat here, and then here's this national stat. And you will not believe all the times that I will read articles and I will go, that makes no sense whatsoever, because you're using a national data and you're extrapolating the data from a national statistic and then implying it or employing it for your argument in this particular case. It could be higher, it could be lower in New York City. And so using the national statistic doesn't necessarily get to the clearest amount of data. And so I know that the decision makers, at least I want to believe this in my heart of hearts, have clear and accurate information. But because of these articles are written using piecemeal and statistics from other things to buoy the argument for or against, the data that comes in is not clear when we read it. And so that's not always effective. But as a leader, you want to make sure that you have access to the clearest information that you possibly can. Here's a third concern for the emergency workers themselves. Like, is there genuine concern that you have, having done your due diligence to walk alongside of, to get to know these people who are police chiefs, fire chiefs, people who are working in these vulnerable and exposed places? Do you know what their circumstances are? Have you walked among them? Have you talked to them? Are you receiving calls? Like, getting accurate information, then having an accurate concern for the people whose lives are going to be impacted by the decision that you make. A lot of times, and this is puzzling to me, that there will be this distance between decision makers and those in whom the decisions are made for. You know, we look at that and we say, well, there's no representation for those people. And I don't know what your view is of unions. Some people love them, some people hate them. But in this particular case, we see the unions are speaking on behalf of the people and saying, hey, we need some time to be able to make a decision. This kind of comes, and a lot of that is posturing, because other places in New York, they knew that this was coming, but saying, hey, we need some more time. If the vaccination rates are going up as you get closer to the deadline, maybe more time is what is required there. So you have unions that are speaking on behalf of the people, because they're actually, so to speak, in the trenches with the people, getting to know their concerns, hearing from them, hearing from a lot of them, and then being able to express those concerns to leadership. And so there's another category that maybe we need to look at here. A fourth category here: plans and alternatives. If you're a leader out there, then I think I've probably said this more times than I can count. If you're a leader that's out there, you better have a plan A and work that plan A to the best of your ability, but you sure better have a plan B, a plan C, and a plan D before you pull the ripcord. Because if all you have is plan A and then it's time to pull the ripcord, you're not a very good leader, because you're going to be in crisis and panic mode all the time. I can't tell you How many times I have come to an issue and I've thought, okay, I've planned, I've strategized, best solution, and then falls apart. Some contingency that I didn't think of, that I wouldn't have thought of, that I couldn't have prepared for happens. And then we're all of a sudden, well, we're going to have to go to plan B. And then often, because you're on plan B, to avoid crisis mode, you better have a plan C. Okay, so if that doesn't happen, that didn't happen. So now we're here. But if this doesn't work out, then we got to go here. And then if this doesn't work out, then we got to, you better have about 3 or 4 plans. And so, from a leadership vantage point, please understand that, and I'm sure in part of the discussion, I'm giving a lot of grace this morning. I'm giving a lot of grace. Baby. They were considering, what if there's people who don't come to work? What if there's a lot of people who retire? How are we going to continue our services if these things happen? And we're going to get to the airline some other day. That nonsense. We're going to get there. Just be honest. Just be honest. One of the things that could happen if you make a decision like this is there could be thousands of people who don't come back to work, and then you got to fill thousands of positions. Or those thousands of people don't come back to work and you're going to have to shut down things, and just be honest about that. So you've got to do those kind of plans and alternatives. Here's a fifth thing. Do you have, once you begin to address this to the public, there's going to be people who don't have all the bits of data, all the pieces of information. Do you have a reasonable, I'm just looking to make sure that I have this in my notes. Do you have a reasonable explanation that you can give to people? Like my coach in college used to say, I don't want to know about the pregnancy. Show me the baby. All right. People are not going to have time to pick through all the details. It's kind of like Jason was saying this morning, the whole long stream hour, like we're so distracted. We got all these different things that are going on, and sound bites. Give me 2 or 3 minutes. Like, Erskin, what are you trying to say? What's the crux of the argument here? Here it is. Everyone wants to be the leader until it's time to make a decision. Here's a leadership grid that if you will go through, I think this will help you. It helped me. It has helped me throughout the years. Risk assessment, clear data, concern for the workers, plans and alternatives. And then on number 5 here, is there a reasonable explanation that you can give people to allow them to say, oh, I see what the problem is. Oh, I see how we've prepared for this. Oh, I see what we need to do. And it doesn't sound like, and I've been extremely gracious in this episode of the Erskin Music Show. Hopefully they won't flag this and take it down. I've read from the Washington Post. I've tried to give, redaction and all the different things that are here, Associated Press, but it doesn't seem like, with the information that has been reported to us thus far, that there were reasonable explanations that were given. Now, perhaps there were. Perhaps there was a long span of conversations that were going on, things that were taking place, and reasonable explanations were given to people. And maybe reasonable explanations were given to people, and that was the reason why you see an 83% jump from 83 to 91. But that's sort of last minute, and maybe that's just a product of the fact they were calling the bluff and saying, oh, they actually really are going to do this. Or maybe it's a product of the communication got clear as we went along. But you want to, regardless of this story or of any other stories that are out there, you want to try to make sure that you have the clearest amount of communication up front that you can to give people a rationale to do what it is they're doing. And maybe that was there, maybe it's not, definitely not reported or seen in the way that this story has been reported. Now, you guys may have some more information on here. Let me plow through 2 more of these. I've got 9 of these, and then we take some comments. I know there's some comments that are piling up there. We'll discuss that in just a second. So high risk during the pandemic, clear data, concern for the emergency workers, plans and alternative, reasonable explanations. Number 6, is there a reasonable solution that we can come to? Maybe it's draconian. Maybe it's not, to have a clear deadline and a clear solution to a problem that you have. Okay, what are we going to do? Here's the problem. Here's the reason why we're responding to the problem, clear. And then here's the solution that we're giving you, or that we're proposing. And then using that to persuade people to get on board with the mandate, whatever that might be. Or if this is in a general leadership context, giving people the rationale for how they can join you in what it is that you are doing. Number 7, regard for exemptions. Now, this is a tricky one for me because there are some that are asking for religious exemptions, and I'll say a little bit about that here in just a minute. But um, I don't know what the process of evaluation is when there's people who are submitting these exemptions, whether they be health exemptions or whether they be religious exemptions, why they should not take the vaccine. I don't know who adjudicates over that and who decides, oh, this exemption is valid and this exemption is not valid. We don't really have a clear understanding of what that looks like. And I don't know that that's one that we would have a clear understanding about. But it might be helpful, at least thoughtful, if you're putting this out for the public to say, okay, and with regards to medical exemptions, we want to make sure that the medical exemptions meet this criteria. Make that in a statement, say that in a line, give people an understanding. Okay, this accrues to the level of what would be a exemption for a health reason. Okay, we meet this, we don't. We have some people who are evaluating. There may be a little bit of gray area there, but we'll figure it out as we go along. We've planned for this contingency and we've made provision for this. You see how this is different than what it is that we seem to be hearing about. But then also when it comes to religious exemption, I want to say this, and then I'm going to deal with some of the comments that are there. By virtue of the fact that there's religious exemptions that are out there, man, it gets really tricky because, man, how do I say this? Having observed this before from some of my friends who are pastors, people get a lot more religious in times of crisis. People get a lot more thoughtful about their spiritual life and prayer. And part of that is God's design. Like he puts us in these situations, like we read about earlier in Psalm 42, where our soul cries out and we have to goad our soul because of the circumstances that are around us. See how that worked together? And so that's not necessarily a bad thing if it draws us closer to the Lord and draws us closer to the need for prayer. But on please again understand this from the standpoint of a leader. Most people don't think like leaders. But from the standpoint of a leader, if you're a pastor, you're a priest, you're somebody that's in a religious authority, and you're watching people who formerly have not been very engaged or involved in their spiritual life now come to you in a moment of crisis and say, hey, I need an exemption. I got my hand out. Hey, can you help me get past this thing right here? Man, that puts leaders in such a tough and difficult position, because are you using God so that you can get what you want? I think American and Western culture has taught people, and this might be controversial, but in a lot of Western Christianity, especially the health, wealth, and prosperity gospel, we have all but discipled and taught people God is like your genie. Like whatever you want God to do, he'll do for you. Just have faith and put money in the coffers. And such a bad scheme of people's thinking that God is this magical genie that whenever you're in trouble, you just rub him and he'll get you out of trouble. Like, and if he doesn't get you out of trouble, then there's something wrong with God. And you should definitely not trust God because he didn't help you in your time of need. He promises to help us in our time of need, right? Remember Romans 8:28, all things work together for good to them that love God and are called according to his purposes. To them that love God. That's not a general blanket statement for everybody that's out there. And so, if you're watching the show, listening to the show, and you're not a Christian, man, I got nothing for you except for to tell you to repent of your sins, trust in Jesus Christ, and, cling to the Savior. That's the only hope you have. You're a wretched, miserable, rotten, scoundrel sinner that is rebelled against God and deserving of the wrath and punishment and hell that you and I both deserve. I'm not going to get that, because I came to the end of myself and recognized, man, there's nothing good that lives within me. There's no island of righteousness within me. Erskin music, none of this is nonsense. I need a savior, and I can only look to Jesus Christ. I can't look to Buddha. I can't look to Allah. I can't look to any of those other world religions. They're false and inspired by demons. Just in case you're wondering what I thought about all that. That's what the Bible thinks about all that. So, the whole religious exemption part of that, like I totally get it. But have you, as a leader, let me back up here and just say, as you're considering this whole leadership grid, reading this story, following this story, it's not going to go away today, so it'll be out there. Are they clear about what those exemptions are? Health exemption meets this status, meets this criteria here or not there. Religious exemption. Are you actually a religious person? I mean, can we ask that in our culture these days? Because it seems like most people are not. I don't want to make any assumptions about New York City, but not generally known as a place where people go for spiritual pilgrimage and uh, revival city, so to speak. And so, religious exemption, what is the criteria if you're in the leadership position here? What is the criteria for religious exemption? And maybe it's, are you involved in a church? Have you attended recently? Is that a regular part of your life? I don't know. I don't even know how you would do religious exemption and all this. All right. So comments, at least some comments have come in here. Scott, I'm gonna get to your comment. I'm gonna read it. I put it up on the screen. I just put your comment on the screen. I didn't even read it first because I know it's gonna be thoughtful. I haven't even looked at the comment yet because the screen that I'm looking at and the comments that are down below, I'm letting people read this comment and then we'll deal with the comment. I'm so confident in your comment, at least your question or your concern, and I know your heart behind what it is you said. So even if it's something that I don't necessarily see or do see, I'm just going to let it be there on the screen and we're going to process it together. That's what we do on this show. I'm such a giver on this show. What it is there's people who watch this show or listen to the show who I always say, I invite your snarky and, just kind of off color comments. I like that sort of thing. It makes your show spicy. But at the same time, there's people who watch the show that I know we can converse, we can dialogue, we can even disagree about certain things, but not be disagreeable. So let's deal with this comment here. I got to look down here. All right, I still haven't heard an answer to the question from anyone. If the CDC says if you get the vaccine, you can still get and spread COVID, what is the purpose of forcing people to get the vaccine? Very good comment there. That is one that if you have an answer to that question or that concern, jump on here and give the answer. I obviously, I am a man of many talents, but I do not work for the CDC. And yeah, that was a question and a concern that I had several weeks ago as we were discussing vaccination and sort of where that positions us. I think, Scott, the best that I came up with, and I do understand the regard that people have to say, okay, if I'm vaccinated and unvaccinated, I can still spread and I can still possibly be a cause of spreading the virus. I think where the CDC comes back in and says, at least is the answer and rationale that I've heard, is that in response to one's own situation, it lessens the possibility of your death, lessens the possibility if you're spreading it to other people who have been vaccinated. It seems like the death rates are wildly different from those who have been unvaccinated. And so the vaccination, as it were, even though there could be a spread of it and maybe reinfection or breakthrough, as they would call it, does mitigate against the possibility of you having severe symptoms and possibly even leading to death. And so I think that scale or at least grid is there. But I totally understand what you're saying because it's a discussion that I was having with some folks who had not been vaccinated, and we were talking about spreading. And yeah, so that's a, and I don't mean to have all the discussion now. I want to actually wait till the weekend show and have this discussion. Jason and I are going to talk about this. We're on opposite sides of this equation, and I think we have I think I'm not tabling it because I'm running away from the discussion. You guys know Erskin doesn't run away from discussions. If you know anything about this show and Erskin music or anything that we do here, we do not run away from discussions like that. That's one that we need to be having. But what we want to do is we want to model how you have that discussion and have it in a civil way. So very good question, Scott. Thank you for asking that question. Follow up with that, because I think that in regards to one who has been vaccinated, getting infected, the rate in which they are able to recover, the possibility of death greatly decreases. Although I know you would say Cullen Powell, he had complications. He had been vaccinated and he still died. And now it's not a get out of death free card. Just because you vaccinated doesn't mean, I mean, there's people who have vaccinated and then they got a car accident the next day and they died. So the vaccination didn't stop them from death. 1 out of 1 people dies. So that's going to still be the case. But in regards to the spreading of the disease, infection of the disease, and then death rate, I see that dropping substantially lower for those that have been vaccinated. Again, I'm not on a campaign because I do recognize that there are some legitimate legitimate medical reasons why someone should not take the vaccine. Yes, I said, do I need to say that again? Because people, when I start talking about this, people act like I never said that. There are some legitimate reasons. Do I need to put some ears on or something when I say that? There are some legitimate reasons why someone should not take the vaccine. I said that, okay? And then people can try to act like I never said that. I have said this. Anyway, we'll deal with this a little bit later. Jason, how can any entity deny a religious exemption? My religion is not between me, I think, and any church, nor is it validated or denied by government. My religion is between me and God. Oh, that's a good comment. Good statement, Jason. That is a question that we shall find out. I would really, really like to have that bit of data to determine what's the rationale for how you come up with who's religious and who's not, what that religion looks like. I would do one even farther than that, Jason. Oh, we're at an hour and 4 minutes. I lost track of time. I would do one farther than that, Jason. I would say, not only is that an issue that obviously you and the Lord kind of know legitimately where you're at with that, but I would say everyone is religious. It may not be Judeo-Christian religion, but you look at all the other major world religions that are out there, but people who deny God and call themselves agnostic or atheist, they themselves have become a god unto themselves. There are some people who worship political figures, and whatever that political figure says, they will worship and require whatever sacrifice is required to follow. I mean, there's all number of things. Some people worship themselves, worship materialism. So they have a religion. All of us are by nature religious. And so when we say religious exemption, what even does that mean? And how would we determine that? And yes, so far as it goes on this leadership lesson, exemptions, have we thought through what the exemptions are? Doesn't seem like, with Jason's comments there, we have a good grid for that. Let me give you 3 more things, and I think we got to shut this thing down because we're at an hour and 5 minutes. I had no idea we were balling like that today. Number 7, I'll just take through this again. High risk during the pandemic. So it concerned clear data, concern for emergency workers, plans and alternatives, reasonable explanations, reasonable solutions, reasonable in regard for exemptions. And then number 8, the result of what it is talked about. De Blasio said in his report here, and this is from the Washington Post, his comment is, this mandate was the right thing to do, and the proof is in the pudding, de Blasio said. We now see it worked. I'm trying to be super gracious. Maybe I'm too gracious, and you can reprimand me for that. I'm trying to give a little bit of space. We now see it worked. How do you know that it worked if it's only been in effect for 2 days and there's been massive fallout and there's many people who are not at their job? There's trash that's piling up in New York, but I would say there's trash piling up in New York all the time. I was in New York about 2 months ago and there was trash that was piling up. There's a lot of people in New York. So, I mean, I'm not just going to let that, be the determining factor here, but that just felt wrong to say we now see that it worked. Maybe you as a leader give some time to evaluate, and this is just in general, to evaluate what really is. Well, we want to rush in day 1 and be like, hey, look, it worked. Everything's back to normal. Look, there's no fire here. I think this story is going to go on for a little bit of time, and maybe you want to evaluate and be honest with the people about what is working and what is not working. To say that it worked, man, I don't know if there's, I'm being honest with you guys. I don't know that I've ever had a plan that worked. Now, I know the Lord works and the Lord guides and the Lord positions, but I can't think of one show that I've ever played, one plan that I've had that actually worked. So to come out day 1 and say, this was the right thing to do, I've validated this decision that I've made because it worked. He said it. I didn't say it. You didn't ask me, Mayor de Blasio before you came out and made that statement. You hadn't called the Erskin Music Show. You hadn't talked to me yet. And yet you came out and make these statements. I would have helped you. I certainly would have. I'm a giver like that. I'm for the people, not against the people. But you did not ask me. All right, here's this is good. And then the ninth thing, I did 9 things. Consequences, results, number 8, consequences, number 9. Consequence of a decision that you make. Look, if you're a leader, you're going to sometimes make unpopular decisions. You're going to give people all the rationale, all the information, do the best that you possibly can. And because there may be a popular groundswell or information to the contrary, there might be many people who say, yeah, we're not on board with this decision. What are the consequences of this decision? People that are affected by this, people that are now retiring, people that have been harmed by this. Is your consequence for making a decision like this going to override some of the rationale for making the decision? And every leader, whether it be a football coach or whether it be a mayor, or whether it be a pastor, you're going to have to live with the decisions that you make. And I want to say a little bit about that, but let me get to this comment that's here. And Scott, please, again, bring these comments when we do the weekend show. If you're able to watch that, it won't be this weekend, but I think it'll be a couple of weekends when Jason and I discuss this. Wouldn't a testing requirement do more good? If the vaccinated are really more likely to have a milder case, they are more likely to spread it unknowingly than the unvaccinated person. So I think as I was reading through some of the background of the story, one of the things that they were asking was they were wanting to get testing, like regular testing, to kind of see where people were at with things. And for some reason, and I do believe, I'm trying to be gracious here, that there was a reason why they didn't feel like mandatory regular testing was something that they were going to be was going to be sustainable. I don't know the price tag that's involved with regular testing, as that seems like that would tick a lot of those boxes to kind of figure out between vaccinated and unvaccinated people where they're at. That seems like number 6, where we're talking about reasonable solutions. Maybe this is an olive branch. Maybe you make that decision, like, and I appreciate that question, Scott, and that concern. Maybe you make that decision. You say, okay, here's the price tag for us doing regular testing. We seem to be, and this could be information to the contrary, but we seem to be trending downward in the number of infections and the number of deaths in New York City. And so let's continue this course of regular testing so that we figure out, and there's not a mandate that kind of forces people. If people want to be vaccinated, we want to make that available to them. We want to let them know clear information that's there. But this regular testing, okay, that testing is going to require this much money per day per 300,000 people that are going to be tested. And so the price tag for that is this. We're raising taxes so that we can do that. We got to do something so that we can reach that price tag. Maybe that was something that was a consideration that was on the table. You can call me if you're in New York in the city council or mayor's office, and that was a consideration. You said, we just cannot pay that price tag. We're going to have to go this route instead. It's going to be maybe clearer information, more cost effective, save more lives, so on and so forth. I don't know why they made the decision that they made, but just know that either way that you go, Scott, and here's my point in putting that up on the screen, like that may have been a more helpful decision for 300,000 people, or it may have been a decision that cripples the city for years to come. But here's my point in saying all of this, and we do need another episode because I have so much more information that I want to share today. Leaders are going to have to make tough decisions. Everybody wants to be a leader until it's time to make a decision, because when you make a decision, there are going to be moments that people look at and say, that was the absolute dumbest decision that you possibly could have made. And here's the reason why. And they'll look at the consequence, a very real consequence, and they'll say, look, this happened because of the decision that you made. And you're going to have to live with that consequence. But if you make another decision, like there was somebody I know who was talking about mandatory testing and, having personal care physicians that'll either write you an exemption or talk about your health, status of health, or their recommendation, and kind of do it that way. And I'm saying essentially what you're going to end up doing is you're going to end up mandating government health care. If that's the solution that you want to overcome health inequities, you're going to have to position people so that everybody can go to a personal physician and that everybody can be evaluated. And then who pays for that? And so you're not going to get out of this, and this no pun intended, scot-free. You're going to need to make a decision that's going to be consequential to a large degree. And time will tell. Time will tell if that was the best decision, if it was the right decision, the righter decision, all those different things that we'll evaluate in history. And so that's one of the things that we can always look at. Time is going to be able to be a good judge of one's effectiveness in any given circumstance. So we didn't solve anything, but I did want to do something else here. So the teleprompter here really quickly here, because we got Angela McCusin that's coming on tomorrow, and we're at an hour and 13 minutes, and I need to stop. But here's something that I think will help us as I got a whole section on this, and so I may revisit this next week. But as you're making decisions, man, I got to do this next week. Here's 3 things that have helped me, and I'll put these in a show. I don't know why I tried to do that. I tried to do too much today. Just dealing with that one article was enough. We got Angela tomorrow, and we've got preview for a new album tomorrow. But I want to come back. Stick with me next week, and we're going to talk about this because I believe that situations like this show that justice is biblically ingrained within our hearts. We know right and wrong, and there's an imprint of what is right and wrong. Our conscience tells us that, but our Creator tells us that. We see that in the book of Genesis, and I can't go through all this right now, but we see injustice beginning to take place after the fall in the Garden of Eden. Genesis chapter 3, Cain kills Abel. We see where death comes into the world. We see where work and our occupations become fraught with thorns and thistles. And so I got to get back to this. I have got to get back to this. This whole notion of privilege and the way that it's defined is a little annoying to me. I was going to be honest with you. It's a little annoying to me because it is generally targeted at a certain group of people. And we say, well, that group of people has privilege. And so we're going to try to strip away privilege, or we're going to try to expose their privilege and the fact that they're insensitive because of that privilege. What I want to come back and I want to say, and this totally has to be another episode. I'm going to come back and say all of us have certain privileges. All of us have privileges. And depending upon that privilege, that becomes the measure of how blind or insensitive we are. And that we need to address in our heart, in our perspective. But it is a perspective that we have that comes from privilege. Now I'll deal with those things because this story fits within the grid work of that. And I'll show you why that is. And I'll show you an evaluation tool maybe that will help us to work through some of these things. And so again, I don't know if I've just parroted what everybody else is saying out there, but I don't think so. I don't think anybody's helping people think through the consequence of making decisions, the rationale for making decisions, the pathway to making better decisions. I feel like, and this is maybe a prideful statement, I feel like, oh man, I feel like maybe if you give me and some of my friends who I know are really talented at making decisions and have proven themselves to be good leaders adequate information and the opportunity, we could really make some good decisions that would impact and help a lot of people. Now, maybe that's naivety on my part because I'm not in New York. And again, that speaks to privilege. I have the privilege of sitting in Nashville, Tennessee, and doing this show with a limited amount of information that I have. And so therefore I feel like, oh man, I could have made a better decision than the people that were there. Maybe not. Probably in some cases not. Maybe humility would tell us in most cases when people are making decisions, we look at the consequence of their decisions and we say, man, we could kind of Monday morning quarterback this thing, man. I would have done I would have thrown the ball to this receiver. He's wide open. I would have made that kick and would have won the game. We have a tendency to do that. Have to pull back the urge to do that? Maybe we would, maybe we would not. But I feel like there are some things we're missing in the reporting of this story. We'll hear more about this story, and so it won't go away anytime soon. And we'll see what the decisions and the consequences of those decisions are. But hopefully this has been a good episode to help you guys think through a rationale for decisions. It's been the Erskin Music Show. Thank you guys for tuning in today. I've enjoyed every moment of this. I said you get an hour a day. I've given more just because I like you guys. Anyway, enjoyed the show today. This goes down in the annals, season 3, helping us make decisions a little bit better. Erskin Music Show. We'll see you guys tomorrow. We've got a special guest on, the strongest woman. She might be the strongest woman in the world. And I'm going to tell you why tomorrow. It's Angela McHewson who's joining us on the Erskin Music Show. God bless. Have a fantastic day.